But we're really excited you could all join us, and we're looking forward to providing you with some new information regarding the Hoops products, what we've been up to, and what the development plans are for this year. I'm joined today by my colleagues Lionel Vielli and Eric Holgren, as well as Andres Rodriguez Villa. So again, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. So before we get going, I'd like to mention our other virtual events that we'll be hosting throughout the next few months. First off is Hoops Developer Day session, which is taking place tomorrow. And Jonathan Giroir is leading that. Jonathan's here today. So can you tell us just a little bit more about what to expect tomorrow, Jonathan?
Yeah, this is our first event really focusing on our developers and our developer community. So it's the first time we've had a Hoops Developer Day. It is part of this Hoops Summit series. So we have today and tomorrow, but it's going to be more technical, and you can still bring your own beer, or if you have one left over, you're more than welcome to. We're going to be talking about the agile journey that we've had here at TechSoft. That's going to be our keynote from Antonio, our senior director of engineering, global director of engineering. And that journey probably isn't too unlike your own companies. It's been multiple years for us now doing that, but certainly we're reaping the benefits. And Gavin is also, our CTO, going to be talking about what that allows us to do and what it means really for you, our partners and people who are using the Hoops toolkits. Everyone else also likes demos. So we have a demo power hour where both we have internal and external demos that are going to be in rapid succession. We'll be looking at PLM and injection molding and sheet metal bending, as well as physics and a node editor, kind of bringing different toolkits together. So that should be really exciting. And then I know we're going to be talking about today our roadmaps, where we've been, where we're going. You're more than welcome to ask questions, but we also have a number of breakout rooms later in the morning tomorrow that allow you to really get one-to-one with our different product managers. Eric and Lionel are going to be in their own breakout rooms, as well as Andres talking about our CAE tools. There's also going to be some getting started training for those who are interested in the web platform and the native platform, and also a consulting room. So a lot of stuff going on tomorrow. Go to our website, techsoft3d.com, to register. We'd be happy to take care of you and have you there. If that doesn't work with your timing, we also have our ongoing virtual training series. So a number of different events coming up later this year. And even this month, CAD Data Access and C# is going to be held next Thursday. So a lot of stuff going on and when it comes to our technical community. And we'd love to see you, not just today, but in the future as well.
Great. Thanks for that, Jonathan. Lots of good events coming up. So this is a happy hour after all. And before we really get into anything product related, I'd like to suggest a quick cheers. Again, hopefully you all have a beverage nearby because we're going to be doing this quite a bit throughout today's session. So a cheers, everyone. We're glad you're here. And a special thanks to our partners that are here today. We want to thank you for another great year, although I think it was a strange one for everyone. We're glad we had your support. We're glad you're here today, and we're looking forward to another great year together. So cheers, everyone. So this may be a familiar slide for those of you who know us well, but for those of you that don't, this is really what drives us here at TechSoft 3D. We're driven to fuel innovation. So what does that really mean? Well, simply put, we enjoy being the people behind the scenes, providing technology that allows you to go out and bring amazing applications into the world. We get to put our 3D technologies in your hands so you and your teams can build and deliver innovative products. And that's really what inspires us here at TechSoft. It's what keeps us going every day, year after year. Let's have a quick look at our agenda. So first off, we're going to be covering the Hoops platforms, initiatives, and roadmaps. And then we'll move into data access and publishing with Hoops Exchange and Hoops Publish. And we'll have a Q&A after that. Then we'll move into engineering graphics, discussing Visualize and Hoops Communicator, followed by another Q&A. And then a CAE Toolkit introduction section, again, followed by a Q&A session. So lots of opportunities for Q&A after each session. Go ahead, feel free to submit your questions in the chat. or just go ahead and unmute and ask aloud during each of those Q&A sessions. So quick visual look at the products we'll be chatting about today. Again, Hoops Exchange, Hoops Publish, Hoops Visualize, and Hoops Communicator. And I'm really excited to be talking about this slide today. As you may or may not know, TechSoft 3D made 2 acquisitions in 2020 of the companies Ctron and Visual Kinematics, or VKI. These companies bring in lots of knowledge and powerful tools in the CAE world, and we're really happy to have them as a part of our team. And as you saw, we'll be ending our session today with a brief discussion on these new CAE specific toolkits, and we'll be providing some insight on their 2021 development plans. So before we dive into the individual products, let's take a quick look at really, what makes our tools powerful, and that's our platforms. So Eric and Leah now will be walking us through our platform roadmaps and initiatives, but I'll just quickly review what those platforms actually are for those of you who are not familiar with them or who may just need a refresher. So first we have the Hoops web platform, which is a complete package for developing web applications that utilizes Hoops Communicator as its graphics engine. And then we have the Hoops native platform, which is the go-to package for developing native applications utilizing Hoops Visualize as its graphics engine. And finally, we have the Hoops platform, which leverages all of our Hoops SDKs for developing both web and native applications. It's really a one-stop shop, if you will, for application development. And with that, I'm going to let Eric take it away and talk us through our platform initiatives and roadmap.
All right. Thanks, Rob. So Rob showed you in the slide about the platforms, and those of you who have been coming to these summits are familiar with it. And when we talk about our Hoops toolkits, we talk about the power of the platform. And what that comes down to is not just the individual toolkits, but how they all work together, and how by using more than one, you get more functionality. It makes it easier to develop your applications. And it's that glue binding them together that adds so much of the power. Well, we made a pretty big change this year inside engineering so that it was more aligned with how product management was seeing the directions of the products. And we have 2 slides, and they're really important because this first one, when we talk about the Hoops platform, a large percentage of our partners now license more than one toolkit. In some cases, all of them, like you see with the Hoops platform. And even when you look at Communicator, we have very few partners that license Communicator who don't use the built-in functionality of Exchange and Visualize and Publish. And so Communicator itself falls under essentially the platform, right? Because it pulls all these pieces together. And what we've done to align engineering with our vision is we've actually created new squads. So instead of people being siloed based on the product that they were working on, like Visualize or Exchange or Communicator, instead now we've got these 2 squads that we've brought people together across the different products so that we can ensure that the platform itself operates the way that we want. As we add functionality inside Exchange, does it get displayed and interacted with correctly in the graphics toolkits? We want to make sure that everything is done across the board. We can do it faster. And we're really oriented around delivering that to our partners. And there's a slide at the very end which talks even more about how we're changing how we deliver that platform. But let's talk about what we're going to do with this platform squad in this next year. The core focus for them is, of course, improving our own integrations. So making sure that that Hoops platform is the best integration you can find between these different components, right? We want everything to work seamlessly. We want to address any problems that add functionality as needed. But they're also going to be focused on our third-party integrations. We have different integrations with, for instance, Siemens Parasolid, both in Visualize and Exchange. And so it's absolutely critical to us that we support new functionality that gets added inside Parasolid. We're also going to add new features that fall across the different product lines. For instance, adding support for assembly level features inside Communicator's shattered workflows, which is a big mouthful. But our partners in the PLM space, when they are working with standalone Communicator files, it's really critical for them that assembly features get handled correctly. Exchange handles it one way. Communicator was built with one design philosophy. We have to bring those 2 together inside the platform squad to make sure that we address this need for our key partners. And then another good example is our physically based rendering material access. And both Lionel and myself will talk more about PBR on our individual slides, but the material access is a great example. because while we already support reading in PBR materials through the GLTF file format, and you can view that inside Visualize and soon Communicator, what we're doing is actually going to add the ability to export GLTF out, whether from a CAD format through Exchange or through our graphics toolkits. So if you're working with PBR materials inside Visualize, you'll be able to write out a GLTF file for better data interoperability across your enterprise. So those are just a couple examples of what we're working on in the next year on that platform squad. Now I'm going to hand it over to Lionel. He's going to talk about our other cross-product team.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So as Eric mentioned, we have a squad this year that will be dedicated to some BIM initiatives. What we see is that our BIM partners are mostly developing their solutions for visualization, collaboration, and model federation workflow, leveraging the OOPS web platform and the OOPS native platform. So this BIM squad will focus on 3 main projects at platform level to strengthen our BIM offering and to make it easier for you to develop efficient solution. So this first project is to deliver a best-in-class IFC import. As part of it, we will support additional classes that are key for model navigation and model querying. I can mention opening entities and special relationships that are, for example, connection between building storage, space, wall, and opening, and finally a window. And we also are planning to improve the Boolean operation algorithms in terms of quality and performance. The second project is to deliver an out-of-the-box IFC viewer. So the goal here is to expose and leverage in our viewers all the data that are supported by OOPS Exchange, and provide, of course, a more BIM-specific experience to access and consume this data within the web and native viewers. So we will introduce new functions, like, for example, navigation system that will leverage these spatial relationships. And last, we are going to improve performance for large model with a particular focus on BIM and pipes rendering. Of course, aside this, we will keep improving our Revit and DWG readers. So let's move to Exchange. So yeah, we start by Exchange and then publish. So for those that are not familiar with Exchange, I will make first a quick intro about it. Then I will move to what has been delivered last year, and finally give you an overview of our roadmap for this year. So Exchange is an engineering data access SDK that delivers access to other 30 CAD and BIM file formats through a single interface. So it's fundamentally about allowing your application to read CAD and BIM formats, like, for example, native CATIA V5, NX, Creo, Revit, and more, and also exporting data from your application to standard formats such as Stepped, Parasolid, GT, and others. Our partners are from many different areas. They are developing different types of application for different purposes. It can be a CAD application, CAM, manufacturing as a service, CMM, ARVR, digital factory, AEC BIM, and many more. So what's key for them is to have a fast and accurate access to all the data needed by these different workflows. So OOPS Exchange can read all this data without depending on the original software that created the data. Another key point is to enable advanced workflows by providing non-geometric information such as metadata, product manufacturing information, PMIs, features that will help to automatize processes, avoiding recreating data that already exist in the native files. And the third point is that Exchange must integrate into solutions that are being a modeling kernel, like Siemens Parasolid, ACS, Open Cascade, and others. So in that context, there is a strong need around geometry quality, so that these applications can work with the imported data. So let's start with what has been delivered last year. So obviously, as a data access toolkit, our first priority is to deliver quick format updates so that your applications can support the latest version of the files as early as possible. So last year, we delivered 11 format updates, as you can see in different service packs and updates. And to meet our partner expectations, we have also dedicated significant resources to address reported issues as well as feature requests, of course. So aside the updates of the formats, we have been working on several projects. For example, to support manufacturing workflows, we have introduced a new FreeMF format reader. So this format is dedicated to 3D printing. We see a growing adoption of FreeMF. It's definitely replacing the old STL format, and this will mostly benefit to our partner in additive manufacturing and in CAM. On a second theme, to maximize the value people get from data, to optimize their processes, we have worked on two main projects. So the first one is to support visual models, so materials and appearances. So we have delivered textures support for CATIA V5 and SolidWorks. So accessing textures helps mostly people from manufacturing as service and 3D printing solution providers to produce high fidelity printed parts. A second project was about supporting the assembly constraints, also called mates. So these are features that are used to assemble parts together in a CAD package. So accessing this semantic data is helping our partners from robotic and simulation to generate a kinematics model that fits their application, for example, for robots path planning, for tolerance or kinematics analysis. So as a first step, we have delivered last December a beta version of the CATIA V5 mates, and we are currently working on finalizing this. I will come back to that later. To support our Siemens partnership and our common partners, so we are using OOPS Exchange and Parasolid kernel, we have ported the Exchange Parasolid bridge on iOS, and we have also ported the SolidWorks reader to iOS. And we have made also some significant effort on in the BIM space, focusing on two main areas. First one was to improve our IFC reader to better support several types of entities, more specifically extrude and revolve entities, such as pipes, for example. And we have also improved the quality and the performance for our Revit and DWG readers. So let's go now to our roadmap for 2021. So as you can see on this timeline, we are planning to deliver 16 format updates along the year. A quick note about the release schedule. It's quite similar to last year. In fact, we will have two service packs, one end of March and one end of June, and we will have one major release mid-December. So one important remark is that to reach our objective of releasing updated formats within 90 days for the major formats that are CATIA V5, Siemens NX, Creo, and SolidWorks, we are also planning to deliver updates in minor versions, so that are coming in between service packs. And during this year, we will introduce some new formats highlighted in blue here. And so GLTF, a new GLTF writer that will come at the end of the month, and also a PLM XML reader. And I will detail these formats in next slide. So regarding the other project for this year, so as I said, two new formats will be introduced. So PLM XML reader. So it's developed by Siemens PLM, and it's meant for PLM and CAD interoperability. This format is mostly used in aerospace and automotive industries. And also we'll introduce a new GLTF GLB writer. So as you may know, GLTF is an open standard format. It's used for transmission and loading of 3D models in web and native applications. So GLTF supports 3D models with appearances, including the PBR physically based rendering materials, 3D scenes, animations, and so on. So the main use case we see we see our consumption of 3D assets in AR contexts. And also, since thanks to its adoption, we see more and more applications that are leveraging GLTF. So, for example, as you may know, Microsoft and many more. In the in the BIM space, we will explore this year new readers that are highly requested by several partners. So first one is Autodesk Navisworks. So it's a 3D design review solution used primarily in construction industry. So we will focus on the NWD format, which is a snapshot of a design review. It's a self-containing format that can be shared across various stakeholders. And the second project is to read the Bentley MicroStation, so it's a DGN format. So MicroStation is a CAD platform software developed by Bentley System, and it's an offering solution quite used in architectural and engineering industries. So we are currently working on the Navisworks reader, and DGN should start in the second half of the year. And based on our progress, we will deliver early versions to partners who are interested by these formats to collect feedbacks and also to ensure that we will deliver the right level of quality and meet our partners' expectations. So as I said, we may release early versions and beta along the year. So in terms of integration with modeling kernels, we are planning to improve our Parasolid reader as well as our Exchange Parasolid bridge to leverage the new convergent modeling capabilities offered by Parasolid. The latest version of Parasolid kernel comes with an enhanced support for mixed model design, and we see some CAD packages, such as Siemens NX, of course, that are now fully leveraging this convergent modeling. So, of course, we'll have to support this in our reader and in our Parasolid bridge. And finally, in the MBD and digital factory space, we will continue to work on initiatives that have started last year. So regarding the visual models, we will add the support for SolidWorks decals, which are particular types of textures, and this will serve 3D printing solution providers. And we will also release the official support of CATIA V5 mates at the end of this quarter to serve robotics and analysis and simulation applications. So this was for Exchange. Let's move to Publish. So Publish is a solution to generate 3D PDF documents and to publish to the web various data from your application. So it's about aggregating any types of data, so including 3D model, metadata, pictures, and many more, and creating documents for viewing and collaboration purposes. So it allows also to define interactivity in the document. So interactivity means connections between the 3D annotation and any non-3D information in the document. So it can be a button in the PDF page, it can be a text field, a table, a list of whatever. And thanks to this, it's possible to generate what we call rich and interactive documents, such as reports, work instructions, technical data packages, and many other types. And last, when you license Publish, you also have access to export to standard formats, such as, for example, STEP. And this is very important in the context of MBD and the technical data packages, because aside PDF, it's also important to generate a STEP file that can be embedded in this PDF and that can be shared downstream for example, manufacturing processes. So this is published. And if we move to the roadmap, in fact, I have one slide here. So our main initiatives last year have been to continue our investment on web publishing and to deliver also new capabilities that support the MBD space, the MBD workflows. So for the 3D PDF to HTML export, it has been significantly improved to guarantee high fidelity document in terms of layout and interactivity. And it's also possible to convert 3D PDF documents to self-containing HTML documents, so a single HTML file that can be easily shared and accessed and consumed on any mobile devices. In the model-based definition space, we have introduced a print and a navigate to model function that help producing compelling technical data packages, and of course that help consuming them efficiently. So for the print, for example, it could be strange, but because we know that a technical data package is meant to reduce the reliance on 2D drawings. But what we have heard is that end users, customers, especially at the shop floor level, they still have the requirement to print documents. So this function is a simplified method to print views from a selection of views in a list. And regarding the navigate to model, we see that real life parts are quite complex, and 3D model can be annotated with numerous PMIs. So the goal here is to offer an efficient way of navigating amongst these PMIs with a very limited number of mouse clicks to improve user experience when consuming this document. So in fact, it's possible to have a long list of PMIs, and by a simple selection, a single click selection of one PMI in a list, it automatically activates a view where this PMI is visible. And of course, the PMI is highlighted, the surface that is reference is also highlighted, and there is a zoom to both of them, so that with a single click again, the user can really confirm what the PMI is and where it is located in the model. And this year, so we'll keep improving how Publish supports MBD workflows. So we have several potential initiatives, and one being the support of multiple viewports. So having multiple viewports in a 3D PDF document is something that already exists. But this initiative is about setting the default view orientation in each viewport, and also defining the behavior between these viewports. For example, if you rotate the component in one view, it will be possible to define the behavior if it will rotate automatically in the other views or not, and similarly for zooming and for pan. So this is it for me.
Great stuff.
Yep.
Thank you, Leah. No, that was a lot to cover. I appreciate that. It was a lot to take in too. So are there any questions? Dave, I saw you had a question you put in the chat here. If anyone else wants to ask questions while we're going through this, please feel free to throw them in the chat or unmute afterwards and ask aloud. But Dave says, I see IFC Reader was delivered in 2020. So perhaps my previous comment, see there. So how does IFC Reader bring in extruded geometry like pipes?
Yeah, I guess I can clarify that. We had a request for doing IFC support. And of course, you bring an IFC file, you get a ton of these pipes. And the pipes are all extruded geometry. It'll be some piece of geometry extruded, right? So we came to TextSoft and said, well, could you bring those in as a BREP? Well, the problem with that is, or actually we asked the partner we were working with to export them as BREPs. We said, if you export them as a BREP, we can read them in exchange. Well, the problem is if they take all these pipes and export them as BREPs, it's going to be really inefficient. Right. So what they're telling us is, no, we're going to write it as an extruded solid or extruded geometry. You figure it out. So then the question is, if you bring in an IFC file in exchange, it currently doesn't read that. How would it read that? It wouldn't be efficient for it to read as a BREP, because you'd be creating this whole BREP for this real simple, like, here's a shape extruded along this distance. So for the slides you were talking before, Are you saying that you're adding actual support for those extruded geometries directly in Exchange?
I will answer on 2 points. So I mentioned optimization for extruded entities and especially for pipes. So our plans are to maintain the semantic definition of the pipe and to how to say that, to leverage some shaders capabilities from the graphic engines and to automatically generate the tessellation of these entities and to get better performance. And we have also plans, so I don't have the details in mind here, but I know that there are some VREP entities that also should be supported this year in Exchange. So yeah, I will go back to your request, and we have bandwidth, and it's planned to work on these topics. So to confirm with you exactly what is the case you are encountering.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's good news. I guess what? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Well, yeah, one thing to think about too is that's wonderful that you'll preserve the semantic notion of the extruded geometry, provide tessellation for it so we can render it. Another thing just to think about is the projection, the point cloud projection, because that would be what we would do with it. We would bring it in. We'd want to do projection to it to analyze, to do analysis. So.
Sure. And I just wanted to chime in and say, inside Visualize, we actually have a geometric entity designed to make it easier to deal with pipes, right? The polycylinders, because we have so many partners inside the plant and plant process and marine space, and we'll actually be looking to add that to Communicator and doing the same for extruded shapes so that we can have vents and stuff like that. So.
Great. Thanks for the question, Dave. We have another question come in for you, Lionel. Will export to GLTF be available on all platforms? So iOS, Android, Mac, Windows, and web. And will PBR be supported?
So currently, we should have it on Windows and Linux. I will have to confirm on iOS and Android. I'm less sure. Sorry for that. Yes, it supports the PBR. In fact, at the moment, you push your data from your application into a PRC. So there you can push multiple textures. It will be maintained and exported as PBR material in GLTF or GLB.
Yep. And then for those of you that are using Exchange and Visualize, like you, Eric, we are actually going to be adding that PBR rendering on mobile. So that's going to be in the next service pack.
Great. Thanks, guys. Another question coming in from Phil. See, I saw that you are going to support XML. Do you support AP242 XML as well?
You mean PLM XML or? Let me check the question. You support XML IBOM. Is next objective. No, so for step, I don't think we support it. Yeah, this project is about PLM XML. I'm not sure I will understand the question. Maybe I'm not aware about some of these objects you are mentioning. But yes, PLM XML assembly it's a structure definition that references different formats, different files that are the components. And yeah, we will support these PLM XML assemblies. And for the business object XML, but if it's part of STEP, I don't think we have it today. We support the STEP XML reader. We don't have it as a writer currently. If it's more your question. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you're saying that, Lionel, can you give him details about the shattering support you were adding in 2021?
As far as I know, so we haven't been working specifically on shattered mode in Exchange. I think it's more a question for maybe for the graphics. Let me check.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Prem, are you talking specifically about the item that I brought up around support for assembly level features inside shattered mode? And
Yes.
what that, yeah.
Yes,
so
I'm looking for what is currently present in, you spoke about Communicator, the assembly level features in Shattered.
Yep.
So I would like to check what is the status for that in Visualize versus Communicator, and what is the roadmap for that?
Yeah, so inside Visualize, it works because when you load the assembly in, you can get the correct representation from Exchange, okay? Because we're dealing with it essentially at that assembly level, which is also what happens if you convert an entire assembly over with Communicator. Where there is a slight disconnect is when you are working with Communicator inside its own standalone file mode, and you are using its shattered mode, because it only generates one version, one stream cache file for each CAD file, so each CAD part. And the problem is, of course, that those assembly level features can cause multiple geometries based on how they are being used, or what the assembly that is containing it defines, okay? And so what we're looking to do is actually extend that Communicator shattered workflow so that it can support these multiple different versions of the geometries based on which assembly is using it. It's actually a tricky little situation, but we believe we have a solution for it. So that'll be coming out here. Not in the next service pack, but we certainly would hope to get it out by service pack 2.
Okay.
Great. Thanks for that, Eric. We have time for just one more question I'll get to from Oliver. Can you expand on support for parasolid convergent modeling in 2021? Would it allow converting a convergent model to a standard parasolid format? And would it be optional with Hoops Exchange?
So yeah, this project hasn't started so far. It will come in a couple of months. What I know from it is that there are different buffers in Parasolid that describe the BREP and the tessellated data, tessellated faces from a body, and so our plans are to read these two buffers and of course get them in our internal format that is a PRC. So this is the first goal we have, and of course when reading such mixed bodies, we also want to be able to push them to the Parasolid kernel thanks to the bridge. For example, if we read an NX file, we want to maintain, of course, the definition of this mixed design body through this import process. So regarding I don't think we are gonna convert it to, I would say, to a standard Parasolid format. We don't want to lose any information, and yeah, at that point, I can't tell you if it's something we could consider, and if yes, if it would be optional or not. I would be interested to have a direct discussion with you on this topic, if possible, because it's not a use case I have in mind at that point. So maybe it's something to, of course, to take into consideration. Yeah, don't hesitate to contact me direct after this presentation. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Lionel. And as Lionel said, if there's anything we didn't get to, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to Lionel directly, and we will move along. So thanks again, Lionel. That was a lot of information you covered, and thanks everyone for their great questions. So I told you there's going to be a few of these today. So let's go ahead and raise a glass to Lionel. Great job, Lionel. And in the name of data access and publishing, how about a cheers, everyone? All right, and with that, we'll move on to our engineering graphics discussion. And on to you, Eric.
All right, thanks, Rob. So we're going to go through and present both of the graphics toolkits the same way that Lionel did, where we'll just give a refresh of what the product is, what we delivered in the last year, and what we're looking at for this year. But before I do that, I know a lot of you were at our previous Hoop Summit, the first virtual one, and I spoke there about the need for us to bring the graphics toolkits together, not to add a fourth API, just to be clear, but to really focus on these as a cohesive platform. When we add functionality to one, we want to add it in the other, so that we can ensure that our partners who use both products don't have a completely disjointed experience, and you can add functionality regardless which SDK you're using. You'll see when we talk about what we delivered this year that there were quite a few projects where that was the case, and also you'll see that we're still going to continue that this year. And we're getting good traction with it, so hopefully everyone feels like things are starting to move together. Having said that, let's go ahead and dive in. So first up is Hoops Visualize, and this is the original Hoops toolkit dating back to the beginning of TechSoft. It's our toolkit for native engineering applications, and what that means is anything that you're building on Windows, Linux, Mac, but also mobile devices, whether it's iOS or Android, or even some AR and VR devices. It comes out of the box with powerful integrations to not just our other Hoops toolkits, but several other third-party toolkits, such as Siemens Parasolid, like we talked about before. It supports a wide range of workflows. We have partners all across CAD, CAE, CAM, BIM, metrology, plant and process, marine. So it's well suited to engineering regardless of which vertical you are in. And one of the nice things about Visualize is, as a developer, because we support all of these different platforms, because we actually remove your concerns about the underlying technology, you're able to write your code once and then deploy it across all the different platforms that you want to support, reducing your development time, both for these different platforms or if you choose to add additional platforms down the road. So let's shift over and let's talk about what we did in last year. So one of our big focuses last year, besides critical issues for our partners, was performance. Right? Everyone knows that we have to continue getting faster, models get bigger, everyone still expects a pleasant, positive experience when you're interacting with your models. So we did focus on performance, especially around the middle of the year. That included enhancements to our static model algorithm, which, for those that don't know, that is essentially a built-in optimizer that can take your scene graph and make it display faster as far as your user experience goes. In addition, we also made improvements to the Hoops Exchange sprocket so that our partners bringing models in through Exchange would see faster frame rates as we went through and optimized that scene graph, whether they were using static model or not. We also made substantial improvements to our 2D PDF output based on some partner feedback. In fact, one of the most sizable parts of that was we used to insert text mostly as triangles, right? We would tessellate the text, put it as triangles, but that removed the ability not only to search for text strings anywhere in the document, but also the ability to copy it and take that out and paste it somewhere. So we have added that. We made pretty substantial jumps forward with it. We did also add a new driver, which is focused around headless and virtual environments. So when people are logging into remote devices, now in some cases, you know, they're logging into a system that has dedicated graphics hardware, and this is a moot point. Everything ran fine, but as we know, especially in this last year of COVID, that is not always the case. And so systems where people were remote logging in that had no dedicated hardware weren't able to use our most current drivers. So this new Mesa driver is based off our OpenGL 2 shader-based driver. It uses Mesa, which is an industry standard solution for supporting these software-only modes. And we've had pretty good response to it so far. At the bottom of the slide, you could see one of the big improvements that we made last year, a new feature. This is a new Hoops Communicator sprocket. We already had the ability to export from Visualize to HTML pages through Communicator, but what we've done now is add the ability for a Visualize application to connect to a Communicator server and stream data down from that Communicator server down into your Visualize application and be able to interact and manipulate it just as you would with Visualize. In addition, you can actually load our standalone version directly. And the goal of this was really to support our partners that started out, built their cloud-based system and said, I really want to have a specific look and feel on my mobile devices. I don't want it to be inside a browser, but I also don't want to have multiple versions of my data. So what can you do? And that's really where the Communicator sprocket came from. So if you built your main application with Communicator, you can now build a customized front end using Visualize, have your native application, and it's going to work with your data just as you would with your browser-based solution. And then the next one there, we talk about large transform rendering. And what this really is better support for things like doubles inside models, but also models which contain very large transforms, such as IFC models that have GIS locations. So a transform that says this building is in, say, Sydney, Australia. And that's a real problem because it moves it so far away from the camera. And so what you see in the video below is you get Z-fighting, you get jittery camera moves. And what we did was add better support for this. And so everything is now acting the way it should. We did also have some other improvements that I didn't call out here specifically. That includes support for Qt Quick, so their new toolkit, which makes it easy to create new applications. So we added support for that. We added support for our Parasolid sprocket on iOS, and we also now enabled NavCube customization, which allows you to localize it. So if your entire application has been localized to different languages, you can just as easily have the NavCube in that same language, fonts, colors, whatever you need to fit your look and feel. Okay, so now let's talk about what we are planning for this year. Again, we're going to focus on performance for quite a bit of the year. Mainly, this is going to be based on dealing with large models, but we're also looking at some other enhancements based on partner feedback. And one of those is hardware acceleration for text. That might seem strange unless you happen to be in the plant and process or shipbuilding business, where we consistently see an awful lot of text applied, for instance, across pipes. So you could have thousands or tens of thousands of these text strings that are on these pipes, and you need to be able to see it. Having software only rendering is a pretty big hit. So we're looking to accelerate that via text. We're also adding an animation manager. For those of you on the 3DF interface, you already have one through the MVO module, but HPS does not. And while it had everything you needed to build your own, what we're going to be delivering is a keyframe style controller where you will be able to animate multiple bodies, and this should apply across multiple different workflows. So for instance, you could do 5D simulation in BIM, you could animate a digital factory, you could design work instruction, work instruction packets, so you can author those. So really it comes down to keyframe editing of position, rotation, scaling, visibility, color, transparency, etc. So for our 3DF partners, we are going to improve and document our existing support for custom shaders. For those that don't know, that was a not highly publicized part of 3DF. We're actually going to beef that up. We have some long-standing partners who have asked for it, and we're going to deliver that. But we're also going to look at possibly expanding that and offering it inside HPS, so that if you have a specific need around a custom shader, we're going to try to open that up and see if we can meet your needs for it. Last year, we started working on porting Visualize in the entire Hoops portfolio to Apple Silicon, so macOS on ARM. We did release beta versions of that. The feedback has been pretty good. We'll be delivering official support for that early this year. And we're also working on a Metal driver. For those that don't know, Metal is Apple's proprietary graphics SDK, so for macOS and iOS. And of course, every year they make noise about trying to kill OpenGL. And so we really want to provide a Metal driver to insulate our partners from any changes to that platform. This is important enough to us that we started the year with a two-man team dedicated to delivering this thing. So the only thing they're working on is the metal drivers so that we can get it done. Down on the bottom, we're going to make some slight improvements to our AR support. We're going to update the sandboxes. We're going to try to keep the underlying AR toolkits more up to date. So whether it's AR Core or AR Kit, and add functionality that you would expect to see in there, like having the lighting inside the visualization be representative of what the camera is actually seeing, so that you can play around with this and you can already have these capabilities if you're looking to build an AR application. We're also looking at supporting HoloLens 2. Of course, that is the leading piece of hardware in the industrial AR space. So that's the one that we are most interested in adding. And then long term, we are going to begin investigating integrating one of our new components from the CAE side of the house, Ctron's desktop components, with Hoops Visualize, and see what we can do for both of those with that. And the final point on this one is, we all know that generative design is an expanding market. Right now, it's pretty tricky and messy to try to display it with Visualize or Communicator. And so we're going to take a look at what we can do to actually handle that data, including support for implicit modeling directly, so that partners in that space can easily use our toolkits to do it. Okay. So now we're going to switch over to the other side of the graphics house, and this is Hoops Communicator, which is our toolkit for cloud and web-based application development. You've probably seen it in action inside Aris Innovator or My SolidWorks, Assemble Systems, or GrabCAD Workbench. It's easily customizable to give your own look and feel and experience. Lets you bring your engineering data to life in all major browsers on desktop and mobile, and there are no plugins required. It's a zero plugin client. At its core, it's a high-performance graphics engine. It's capable of streaming massive models from the server down to any device through the browser. But we also offer the ability to use it in different modes. For instance, I've talked about partners in our PLM space. And so what they typically are looking for is a very quick modular data conversion. And so they're dealing essentially with, I think I explained the shattered workflow, but they also have standalone files so that they can have a very easy one-to-one parity with a model. And if somebody makes a change in an assembly, uploads a new version of a part, you can just convert that one and not the entire thing, making it really easy to actually manage this and have your application be fast. In addition, we also support server-side rendering, so that if you are dealing with these enormous models, you might want to keep them in-house on the server, or you might be streaming them down to a hardware-constrained device, like a phone, and you still want people to be able to see the bulk of the model. Using Communicator, you can author your data directly into it using our libraries, or you can use our converter, which enables you to bring files in for CAD or BIM through Exchange. You can also export whatever images you need, CAD standard file formats like STEP, and also 3D PDFs. Of course, like Visualize, it has engineering operators in there like measurement tools, view management, data interrogation, and Redline. And it's used for workflows ranging everywhere from PLM, ERP, CAD, to CAE, BIM, and more. Okay, let's talk about what we did last year. Much like Visualize, we focused on performance around the middle of the year. Now, we did deal with different issues than Visualize on performance, notably around our PLM type workflows. So we worked on improving the performance for standalone stream cache file loading. What we really wanted to do was get that file loading directly as close to comparable as we could to the streaming. And we did pretty well with that. We also improved the performance with shattered workflows, so that as people were bringing in these different assemblies, the files were loading in faster and faster, and we made enhancements around loading in IFC files. We did make improvements to our shattered workflows, like I mentioned, not just performance improvements, but also in the way that you can interact with it. Again, very critical to our partners in the PLM world. And similarly, we also began porting Communicator to Apple Silicon, and we'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. We added official support for Docker, which of course is used so much to easily scale up your systems. One of the things that we did to bring some parity compared to Visualize inside Communicator last year was we added our operator and user interface source code to the packages. So if there was an operator that someone wanted to use to build their own customized version. Previously, you either had to ask us for it or figure it out. Well, now you actually get that source code and you can just build it yourself so that the operators work exactly as you expect. On the bottom, you'll see a bunch of improvements that we designed around BIM and AEC markets. In particular, we spent a lot of time improving our 2D WG support, not just rendering quality, but also performance time and conversion. We made improvements to our navigation, including not just changing the way that the actual navigation operators work, but in the previous slide, what you saw was actually our automatic 2D floor plan generation for IFC models, which makes it much easier to see where you are in a floor. It's fully customizable, so it can work how you want it to. Much like Visualize, we dealt with our GIS coordinate double issue. So Communicator also supports that. You shouldn't see Z-fighting. You should be able to use all of the operators exactly as you would expect to. And then finally, in both products, we also added new measurement operators. And previously, the measurement operators in Communicator outside of point-to-point were BREP based. Now, these new measurement operators will work off any data. They work off the tessellation. And so this is especially important for our partners in the BIM and AE space, but also our partners inside the plant and process and even shipbuilding. Okay, where are we going in 2021 with Communicator? Again, we're going to focus on performance. This one in particular is going to deal with the BIM workflow around federating models. So in particular, when you are dealing with multiple large models. Yes, the performance is great for massive models if you convert it all at once, but when you start pulling these things in and federating them, we need it to be a little better. We need the streaming to work as you would expect. So we're going to focus on that to really bring the best experience we can to that BIM market. Like inside Visualize, we're bringing an animation manager to Communicator. In particular, this is notable because while the APIs will be different, obviously they have to be since Visualize is C++ and C# and Communicator is JavaScript, the underlying manager and the controls and the workflow are identical across the two different products. So if you are using both, you're not going to have to learn one system and then the other. All those concepts apply across both, and it should make it very easy for you to add support regardless of which toolkit you are using. We're going to give you better error reporting through our converter. If you only convert one file and only output one file, it's great, but a lot of our partners actually do multiple steps inside a conversion. And so if I read in a file and I export 5 different outputs, right now you just get a very kind of global, did it fail, did it pass? Well, what we want is for you to know if something failed, what failed and what succeeded, so that your application can make choices based around that. Communicator is also going to get physically based rendering. Visualize has had it now for a couple of years. Communicator is finally going to get it. We had to focus on other stuff. This is not just PBR by loading GLTF through Exchange. You also will be able to use the Web Viewer API to make changes to materials. And we're adding a mode where you can load in a CAD file, which does not include any kind of PBR material, and still get a PBR rendering so that you get a higher quality rendering in the viewer without having to author it in a separate app and then bring it in through GLTF. Like I mentioned on the previous slide, we are going to roll out official support for Apple Silicon with Communicator, which might seem strange because nobody is going to want to run a Communicator server out there in space on Mac hardware. However, the reason we're doing this is we have partners who are building essentially native applications, but they are using Communicator inside frameworks like Electron. And in order for that to work, we have to support Apple Silicon. So that work is mostly done, and we will be rolling that out soon. Again, much like Visualize, we'll be looking at supporting generative design and implicit modeling so that partners out in that space can actually display their data without having to do a huge amount of conversion and cleanup. And again, just like Visualize, we are looking to add custom shader support into the Communicator web viewer. This is actually a surprisingly frequent request that we get in a couple different sectors. So we're going to take a look at how we can crack that pipe open and let people get a little bit more control. Okay, so we're going to jump to the next slide, and it's going to show you the release roadmap, much like what Lionel showed. And this one's already pretty busy, but there's a reason that I put Visualize with its 2 different interfaces and Communicator on the same one. Would have been great if I also put Exchange, but it would have been super messy. And the reason that I would have liked to have it on there, if you look on there, you can see that the major releases, and the service packs are aligned around each other. So back in December, we had our first simultaneous release of the entire Hoops platform. We've never done that before. And that is something that we want to continue to do throughout the year. And there's a couple different reasons for this, but the big one is previously Exchange would go out and then Visualize would go out, and our Visualize partners would have to wait or immediately request an updated sprocket so that they could work with the new Exchange version. And that could be time that you had to spend waiting before you could get the new updates from Exchange into your partners. And Communicator was behind Visualize, and it used both of them. And so our Communicator-based partners would have to wait, sometimes a month to get these new updates to the file formats. And so what we're trying to do is get you everything at once, so that you don't have to wait, so that you don't have to ask for an updated sprocket. You just get it all, and it just works out of the box. And that's a pretty common request. And so, we really realigned some stuff inside engineering, and the product team is working on doing this so that we can do it consistently and keep giving you the best experience across the Hoops platform that we can. I have one other point to add on here, and it happened pretty recently, so we didn't even make a slide for it. If you've come to these summits before, you know that one of the most frequent requests that we get is, why can't I see your roadmap? And in fact, 2 years ago, we didn't really show the roadmap at a summit, and we got called out publicly for it. Well, as of yesterday, we have now posted roadmaps publicly for all of the Hoops platform. And so you can go there and see not just the release dates of what's coming, but you can also see what we're working on in the near term and then throughout the year. We don't have a slide for it, but if you go to the developer zone, to your normal download location for the products, you'll see a link. And similarly, if you go into Jira Service Desk and go into one of the products, you'll see the link on there too.
Great, thanks, Eric. And speaking of those links, Jonathan's actually adding them to the chat right now. So if you need to circle back, they are in the chat. You can grab those and go see our now live product roadmaps. So thanks for covering all of that, Eric. And now it's the time for a little bit of Q&A. We did have some questions come in while you were chatting. So I'm going to scroll up, and I think Dave asked, can you elaborate on the large transform rendering? We've run into that when users have data very far from the origin. How is that used from an application?
Sure. So what happens inside Visualize when you have these large transforms is there's an option you can set, which basically says, do I need to honor these, or do I want to get rid of them? And what happens is we won't use them. Now, if you use the option, what happens is we attach it as user data. So you still have access to it if you need it. And so in the case of if you have multiple buildings that are in different spaces, you could actually compare those transforms and understand where they are differently. But what this does is it lets us get the model much closer to the camera so that we don't deal with all of these problems like the Z fighting and the jittery cameras. Communicator takes a slightly different approach. And honestly, that's because of some of the strengths of JavaScript and its ability to handle doubles more. And so we basically do a shift and then another shift back. It's kind of a trick, but it works really, really well. Unfortunately, Visualize isn't able to do that at the moment. So we had to take a different approach. And if you're dealing with models that don't have that transform, we actually have workflows in the documentation now for how to manage that.
We saw this with points, just simple points. And you get the points really far from the origin, and they get all jittery, and the point markers.
Oh, yeah.
So is that something I set on a segment? I go to the segment and I tell it to, how do I do that in Visualize? Is that, if I know if I'm setting up a, points in a shell that have extremely large values, are you saying that I mess with the numbers myself, like use smaller values and move things around? Or
so just to be clear, Visualize does not have a complete pipeline that supports doubles, right? Which if it did, that would deal with this. However, it would require a pretty major re-architecture under
sure,
the hood, because
sure.
every operator would have to support it and every interface would have to add it. And that's why we took the approach. So there is a section in the documentation that says, if this is what you're dealing with, these are ways to mitigate it, right?
Okay.
Given your workflow, Dave, and knowing what I know, we could talk about that. I don't know if you're coming to the dev day tomorrow.
Yeah, I am.
It would be a great question for one of our developers. Otherwise, you and I can talk, and I can get one of the engineers to really lay out a use case that would work for you.
Okay, great.
Great, thanks, Eric. Thanks, Dave. One more question we have here. So does the Hoops Communicator sprocket allow streaming data from Hoops Visualize to Hoops Communicator without converting the data?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on what you consider converting, right? There has to be some conversion in there at some point. But basically what happens is the sprocket, the new communicator sprocket, is smart enough to know, okay, this is what I've received, and it inserts that data. It basically reads it in and says, okay, I've got a mesh from communicator, or I've got, whatever material, etc. Brings it in and knows what the map over inside Visualize is. And then it inserts that as standard Visualize type geometry and segments. So it handles all of the conversion for you. And there was actually a graphic showing that, loading that giant Boeing 2 GB STL first in Communicator and then inside Visualize. And we do have partners using this out in the BIM space right now. So.
Great, thanks, Eric. Eric, I have a softball question for you, and it pertains to our next slide. What are you drinking for our happy hour? What are you cheersing with this afternoon?
Oh, well, sadly, I believe because I'm out in the rural sticks, my package did not arrive in time. So as close as I could get, I actually have a local dry hop cider, but I'm drinking it in a Crux glass from Bend, Oregon.
All right, that's great. You got the Central Oregon thing going. That's pretty good. And then hopefully your beers show up and you can enjoy them later this week. All right. So thanks, Eric, and thanks everyone for your questions. Again, a ton of information covered, really great questions. So how about one more cheers for Eric and to questions and to engineering graphics in general. Cheers, everyone. And with that, we'll move into our final session today. And I'm very happy to introduce to you Andres Rodriguez Villa. So Andres, go ahead and take it away with our CAE Toolkits overview.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Well, as suggested early on, this final presentation is going to focus on a number of new toolkits in the TechSoft portfolio, following the acquisitions of companies Citron and Visual Kinematics. This presentation is going to be sort of a high-level overview, just to give you a taste of what's in store and what these toolkits can do. So I guess the best thing to do is just to dive into the presentation. Good way to present all of these toolkits, there's quite a few of them coming along, is probably to take a look at the standard CAE workflow. So it's a three-step process. Pre-processing, that's all about setting up the data. Then there's a compute stage in which a solver will sort of simulate the system that you're looking at. The solver will produce results, and then you go into the post-processing phase in which the results are analyzed and shared. On the pre-processing side, it's really about going from the CAD world to the CAE world. There's an intermediate step there where the tessellation that comes out of a high order representation of the model and coming from the CAD. Tessellation needs to be cleaned up before basically the meshing step can act on this tessellation and produce the mesh that is better adapted for the simulation at hand. Solver is all about computing, actually solving the physical equations that simulate the system you're looking at. And as I said, the post-processing stage is all about analyzing, but also about sharing the results of this analysis. So now if we take a look at the technologies involved in all of these steps and see what SDKs we can put in front of them, Well, first step is going from CAD, high order surface representation, to a lower order one, a tessellation. Put STL here on the slide. That's a pretty good job for Hoops Exchange, as this is a product you all know or should know about, or Lionel presented early on. So Hoops Exchange is going to take care of that step, going from BREP to an STL. Then TechSoft also has a Polygonica further on that can handle any mesh repairing or mesh healing, water tidying, and all these types of operations that allow a potentially dirty STL to become a true mesh, a valid mesh for CAE operations. That mesh can then go into VisTools mesh, an SDK for 2D and 3D meshing. I'll get into details in the further slides. Further along, there are a couple of SDKs that handle at different levels the solving of finite element equations. And once the results are produced, then we get into the Ctron space, second company that was acquired by TechSoft, which really is about handling CA results and being able to analyze them and sharing them. So these first five or six SDKs or 7 SDKs handle just the main workflow. There are other functionalities that sort of range, apply over a range of these steps, a bit more generic functionalities like interoperability, which is all about reading and writing. That's handled by VDM Tools, which is a visual kinematics SDK. Of course, visualization is all over the place from the start, where a CAD geometry comes into play, to the end where we're sharing results on 3D objects. So no wonder there's a bunch of SDKs now in the portfolio that can handle this. If you're looking more to the design side, towards the left of the workflow, it's probably Hoops Visualize and Hoops Communicator that will be more adapted to handle that. But once you get into the CA space, and more specifically when results are involved, it's probably the Ctron cloud components and desktop components that will be your best friends. Finally, automation is something that is an engineer's best friend. As soon as something can be automated and let the computers do the work, then engineers like to do that. And the tool for that here is Ctron Python modules, which allows to automate the engineering process in the CA space. Let's take a very quick and high-level look. As you saw, there's a large number of SDKs. I'm not going to be able to go into detail for each one of them, but let's put 2 or 3 lines for each one. Hoops Exchange, that's been really talked about. It's the reference in CAD import and export. It reads 30+ CAD formats. And what's interesting for us here in the CA space is the ability to read the formats and then provide tessellations for the CAE workflow. Then after that, with the tessellation, Polygonica comes into play. This is all about repairing all the problems that designers who don't do CAE leave behind. Talking about folds, holes, nitty-gritty details that CAE simulations don't really care about, like that TechSoft logo is probably irrelevant in a FEA analysis. So Polygonica is really about mesh healing, mesh repairing, simplification, defeaturing. That's what that SDK will do for you. Once all these operations are done, VisTools Mesh can take that data and provide automatic surface and volume meshing capabilities with all the features you would expect from a meshing SDK, such as mesh size control, both in isotropic and non-isotropic mesh size definitions, number of integrations to geometry kernels, control on the quality of the mesh with skew angles, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very robust and high performance SDK for meshing, 2D and 3D, of course. If we look at the solving, there's a pair of SDKs, and they address the different levels of the finite element solving process. On the low level, on the element level, we have the CAE Tools, which allows to generate finite element component matrices and vectors. That's where all the physics is being put into the system, into the equations, materials, among other things. It handles both structural and thermal analysis and will gladly accept linear and nonlinear materials. Then on a more global, higher level, VFS Tools is all about solving the equations that results from the assembly of all these elementary contributions. Linear system solving. There's also an eigensolver for large linear systems. Both of these solvers, the linear solver and the eigensolver, optimize obviously for serial resolution, but also for shared memory resolution as well. There's a very good report on the website of Visual Kinematics on comparison with other popular toolkits, showing that VFS Tools is pretty good on performance on SMD systems. In terms of interop, VDM Tools is to CAE what Hoops Exchange is to the CAD world. It's basically the reference. It reads 20+ industry standard formats in FEA, CFD. It also writes out to 10+ different formats. It's not only about nodes and elements and results, it's also about all the media data that goes along, including boundary conditions and materials. And finally, the post-processing SDKs come in, very similar to Hoops Visualize and Hoops Communicator. There's a sort of a desktop version, a native version, and a cloud version of Citron Components. Citron Desktop Components is the older SDK. Cloud didn't exist 25 years ago, so it all started on desktop. It includes a wide range of formats in terms of import. Very much inspired by VDM Tools, as it uses VDM Tools actually for this data import. The added value here is really about the data processing and the optimized feature extractions like particle traces or cutting planes, animations, plots. All this has been market hardened over 25 years of operation in companies such as Autodesk, powering Autodesk CFD, for example. And 5 years ago, then this desktop components was put on a server to produce display models, and these display models are now streamed onto clients on the web, and web applications are being built with Citron Cloud Components, which is the latest SDK in the Citron suite. Heavily relies on WebGL client-side rendering and is highly optimized and specifically optimized for CA data in terms of streaming. Finally, Citron Python modules is sort of a wrapper to Citron Desktop Components, but with an extra layer for engineers who are mostly not C++ development experts. They just need to be able to extract data with Python. And at the end of the day, this allows to do all the operations, produce custom results, and eventually create reports or send these results to web-based dashboards. Taking a look at the road ahead, 2021, it's already the month of March. It's been a sort of bit of a roller coaster for both companies that were acquired. We're slowly integrating into Texsoft 3D, but we do have a roadmap now, and it's a pretty bright one, I believe. The first point we're looking at is enabling the workflow I presented in the first slide, which means taking advantage of all the technologies that surround us. Probably using Hoops Exchange to do CAD import, but specifically for CAE applications, leveraging Polygonica and creating here an interface to the meshing SDK. After that, it's about creating a bridge in between the visual kinematics mesh and solve SDKs with the Ctron SDKs in terms of visualization. That's already been done during the hackathon. We're already working on this, and there's some promising work in progress. And finally, the interop is sort of split in between VDM tools, which is 95% of the technology is based is found in VDM tools, but there are some tools in the Ctron portfolio, and we just have to make this all work together and create one big unified interop SDK. Second point is we're going to try and leverage all the technologies outside of the CAE space. We're going to be using technology that's in the Hoops Publish SDK to extend our export formats. Lionel spoke about GLTF. Hopefully we will find a way to use that technology to export also CAE results and CAE models. 3D PDF and Hoops Publish, that's obviously a target we're going to be looking at. On the other hand, we hope also to be able to build a bridge between Hoops visualize-based applications that focus on CAE to allow these applications to access the Ctron sharing framework. And finally, we're going to try and leverage the markets we've been able to access and to talk with since we joined TechSoft 3D, and this is really focusing mainly on the PLM viewing market. We would really like to develop plugins for major C simulation packages, allowing these plugins to send their visualizations to the same Ctron sharing framework. And finally, Python and the automation is something we have found very popular among CAE prospects and partners. A lot of them are doing very hard work with the current version. We're going to be adding functionality to this to make it really a standard, probably, hopefully, in the CAE space for automating and reporting using Python.
All right, great. Thanks, Andres. It was really good. Things happening in the CAE world. So we did have a question come in during your presentation. It's from Brandon. Brandon asked, with the thermal analysis, is it possible to include sequential calculations such as various heat treatment processes?
Well, obviously that would be probably means chaining different thermal computations. Is that a correct understanding of the question, or?
Yeah, I think that would be a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, and you're trying to transmit the output of the first stage to the second one. I think that's just a use case. So
okay.
You do have access to a thermal solver, and building your application, you're completely allowed to chain them up and create a sequence. Yeah,
that's great. Thanks.
All right. Is there any other questions for Andres, specifically on the CAE toolkits that were just covered? If there's anything that was left over for Lionel or Eric, feel free to ask something as well.
Yeah, hey, I have a question, and forgive my ignorance. I just found out about your company about 3 weeks ago. It seems like these toolkits could be used to create a pipeline to pre-render drawings. So let me give you an example of what I was thinking. Like, I'm an architect, not a AIA type architect, but a software architect at Walmart. And we have all of our stores in CAD drawings and Revit drawings. And you can imagine that when we do the grocery pickup stuff, we're already calculating optimized paths for the associates to go fill up your cart so they can take it out to your car, right? Could these tools be used to create a pipeline where we we have that path pre-calculated, but then we actually do a live walkthrough through the stores to show where all the products are, so the associates can just pull that stuff right off very quickly.
Yeah, so I guess I'll take this one. I'm going to say it would depend. I'm sorry, did you say they were drawing files?
Yeah,
Or-
they're Revit, right? And then
Okay,
we
okay.
also,
Yeah.
yeah.
So in that case, what you could do is you actually could load in that Revit file. You could bring it into Visualize or Communicator, depending if you wanted, cloud-based or native. You could animate the camera or however you want, but yeah, you could actually set it to have essentially a walkthrough of where they need to go, and then, depending on the level of granularity that you had based on where that product was, in theory, it could almost be like we've looked at AR maintenance workflows where like it could show them, okay, now you need to go down here, and now you need to.
No, we know where every product is on every shelf at every store. So that's cool. So that what I didn't hear mention, but so you could render that to what, like an MP4 or something, so that could be ready for the phone, on their phone when they come up in the store in the morning.
We haven't done much in the way of rendering out to video yet. Okay. So that is something that we have talked about, especially as we begin adding these animation capabilities, the ability to actually animate stuff, save it out as video so that people can then use it. So that one we're not completely ready for out of the box. It would actually be an interactive app, basically.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Cool.
Eric, I know that we've used in Visualize the ability to capture to render an off-screen buffer. So I know Visualize you can render to an off-screen buffer.
Yes.
So you could, I'm just hearing the question, I'm thinking you could render a frame off-screen buffer and do this frame by frame yourself and put that in a video file. Like find a NuGet package or find somebody's probably come up with, how do I make an MP4 file from frame by frame? And you could just do that yourself, have it render off.
Sure. And for instance, I've used Image Magic to stitch together multiple pictures into essentially time-lapse videos, stuff like that. So that is definitely an approach that could, you could try. We just don't, our goal is always to provide stuff out of the box to make it as easy as possible. But yeah, what Dave lays out is, certainly a possibility.
Cool. Thanks, I don't want to get too deep into this, but that's a really interesting workflow. We don't deal with a whole lot of video files. We tend to deal with live 3D. So instead of having your user kind of scrub through a video file, what we do have is all of that 3D geometry on their phone, and it can follow them around as they kind of, they can scrub the 3D data because there'll be a timeline, or as they walk through the store or the building, it can follow them and kind of direct them where to go, either in an AR mode, like Eric said, or just on the tablet, just showing them this is what the store looks like and this is where you need to go. So there's a lot of options there.
That's pretty cool. And that renders fine on the phone and without like waiting for stuff to draw, kind of a thing, because
it all depends, and it all depends how much stuff you're looking to show. Obviously, if you were going to have a CAD model of every single product on the shelf at a certain quantity, that's a pretty massive freaking model. As compared to if you just simply had optimized geometry of things on the shelf. So, there's issues to work around there, which I know, we have a team of consulting engineers who are great at figuring out what the best approach for that kind of workflow could be.
Yeah, I like Dave's idea. Like it could be something similar. I don't mean to solution this, but it could be like, how in Google Maps, when you click, it kind of like jumps you up to the next photo. It could be something as simple as that, just so that people are, the associates are directed around the store in the most optimal path, and they don't even have to spend time looking up the shelf to find where the thing is. And we could all pre-render that, the day of or the night before. This is really cool stuff, you guys. Thanks.
All right, guys. Well, we are about out of time. So thank you all for the great questions. Eric, Lionel, Andres, thanks for the great answers. Just thanks everyone for joining us. That wraps up the Hoops product update and happy hour session. We hope you guys enjoyed the presentations. Hope it was informative for everyone. We certainly enjoyed getting the chance to connect. So I hope to see everyone at Developer Day tomorrow. Again, you can register for that on our website. It's techsoft3d.com. There's going to be lots of great content and opportunities to dive into topics with the technical teams. And we look forward to connecting with you all again very soon. And thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.